Rangers,
Rangers,
all the way,
all the way.
here we go,
Here we go,
here we go,
here we go.
C-130 rolling down the strip.
C-130 rolling down the strip.
Airborne daddy gonna take a little trip.
Airborne daddy gonna take a little trip.
I graduated in 1963 and went into the infantry by choice. My family was begging me to go engineer or something, but I decided I wanted to be an airborne ranger, Green Beret type. I didn't find basic training difficult or anything like that. It was what I expected, except the structure and the guys that I was with. I was kind of shocked and amazed. My bunkmate was a kid from Tennessee mountains who'd never worn shoes in his life. Delightful guy, but I mean, talk about a misfit. They pulled all his teeth out because they were all bad when he entered the Army and gave him dentures 4 months later. So for the first 4 months of our existence, he kind of couldn't eat, I just remember it was a shocking, different experience. But you grew to love these guys. This was in 1958, before Vietnam and well after Korea. So these were kids that got drafted or chose to go in the military as a way to get away from where they lived. Like my bunkmate who lived in Tennessee in the mountains. He wanted to get out and see the world, and the way to do that traditionally has always been to get in the military. So the Army did a lot for him, and that was a big lesson for me to watch. That's, I think, the top experience of the beginning of a military career, is exposure to a different world, different people from all over the U.S., different backgrounds, and how you can come together and form a team. It takes time and it takes adjustment, and that was the big lesson. Don't ever think you're better than your men. Every single one of them can do something better than you can. And when I got to Vietnam, I learned that lesson through real life. I got to Vietnam before the U.S. Army formal units arrived. We were still in an advisory program at that point. That was an exercise in learning how to deal both in surviving in the jungle and also being a co-leader with a Vietnamese senior officer who was the battalion commander, who spoke only French and Vietnamese, but it was part of the growing and widening of your experience base as you got in through the military. It was a lesson for me late in life that the military has a lot good going for it, and that's one of the prime aspects, is that you come in, you can join a team and expect that the people under you and the people over you know their job and will do it and are reliable and honest. And honesty is the biggest. So the Army can do a lot for people who start out a little behind the power curve, if you will. And I think all the services can, with the structure, the discipline, the education that come with joining.
My name is William Chris Carl. I've been in the United States Coast Guard for over 30 years. My best friend had already joined the Coast Guard a few years before, invited me to play football with them on a weekend at St. Louis, Missouri. And I remember when I was playing football, the tackle on the team says, "Would you like to join?" I said, "I'd join right now if we played football every weekend." That was the first lie a recruiter told me. He says, "Yeah, we play every weekend." Well, he lied to me. I joined, and the next thing you know, it was a whole different world, but I enjoyed every second of it. I was a little bit older when I went in. I didn't go in as a 17-year-old. I went in closer to 25 years old. I waited a little while longer. I was kind of feeling a little bit lost, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. Being from the streets of Los Angeles at a very early age, I dealt with a lot of pressures when it was drug addictions and stuff like that was going on. We were homeless. When my dad, and I consider him my dad until the day he passed, when he was introduced into our family, we were basically on the streets trying to fend for ourselves. So I had a different upbringing and understanding where people should show a little bit more compassion to others that are going through strife and struggles. But the United States Coast Guard, when I came in and became a family, and that's what every branch of service, they become an extended family. And that's what it was all about, is helping a country, but also helping each other. It's a lot of steps that I got when I got out. A lot of the other people that I served with and stuff, they suffer from what's called PTSD. And especially after so many tours that I did over there, people try to say, why don't you experience PTSD? I'm not going to say it ever skipped me. I'm just going to say I learned a lot of different values in order to help me get through it. I am proud to be a United States Coast Guardman, but I'm also proud to work with others that serve this country as well in the other branches of service. That's who I am.
My name is Maximina Gaston. I wanted something challenging, and I thought this was a really good opportunity for me. When I first got there, the very first day of boot camp, we got off the bus, and there you go, on the floor. Push-up time. And I was not ready for it, but that made me the stronger person that I am today. That made me build that mindset that I could do it. It is a good path to for your education, for your own life experience. There's a lot to learn, and not to be afraid of anything. Responsibility, teamwork, setting goals in life. That's really, really important to me. That structure that it gave me, respect. There was a lot of things that I valued and I took with me. That helped me build this career that I have now, that it's working directly with employees, which is the same thing, working directly with someone, caring for them, understanding their needs. I took away that experience that helped me build and help me to today, to who I am right now. It gave me that strong personality, that leadership, understanding, responsibility. It feels really good. It gives you that sense of, that feeling that you did something good for your country, that you accomplished something really, really good.
My name is Michael Bensing. I was in the Army for 2 years and 7 months. My highest rank was E5 Sergeant. I was squad leader in Vietnam. That regiment and style was different for me, of course, and I had to get used to that. That was sort of an initial culture shock, but at that age, you get used to things rather quickly because you have to. You have no choice. Well, that structure lends discipline to your life and order, and gives you a sort of a structural foundation for how to live. Just being focused on goals and something to achieve in your life. Life lessons are after getting through and used to the routine, getting used to the variety of cultures and the variety of people that you encounter and live with throughout your time in the military. Some, of course, you've never had any exposure to. It teaches you how to get along, of course, and how to recognize the differences and live with the differences. The entire time I was in Southeast Asia, I was pretty much under fire. It was just a sense of very heightened awareness that you live in for almost 24 hours a day. And you leave the service with that same, with those same senses. It takes a while to get not over it so much as used to not having to live with the heightened sense of awareness. It took me a long time to ask for any help. I knew there was something wrong, but I just figured I could handle it on my own, and it didn't work out very well in my life after the military. I did get help and had some conversations, was involved with several group situations with veterans with similar experiences, and that helped me to not only deal with it and talk about it, but relate to others who were in similar situations.
My name is James Washington, and I'm retired military, Sergeant First Class. I served 20 years in the United States Army. I was born in Camilla, Georgia, which is South Georgia. My family background are sharecroppers. Being a child of sharecroppers, my family was very, very poor. Didn't have anything. I'm accustomed to living below substandard. Raggedy houses, didn't have indoor toilets, had outhouses, didn't have electricity oftentimes, got water out of wells, literally wells that dug with buckets. And I knew it was wrong in my spirit, in my heart. And I said, this won't happen to me. I won't be a farmer. I finished high school in Pelham, Georgia. And when I finally left and I joined the Army, I haven't turned back. I'm the first one on my mother's side to finish high school. The very first one. I was determined because I knew I wanted to join the Army. What I admired the most, seeing them transform civilians from the streets, come from all walks of life, transforming those individuals right off the street into soldiers. And I knew from that point then that I wanted to become a drill sergeant. And I was a hard charger ever since then. I really got a lot out of it. The military has been great to me. I enjoyed the 20 years. I would have stayed in longer if it wasn't for the politics. Like I said, I'm blessed. I came from a bad childhood, but I share that with my kids. What I told you, I share it with my kids. And why do I tell my kids that? Because I want them to know, regardless of where you come from, you can make it. My life lessons, when I first got out of the military, it was a big adjustment. Huge adjustment. Because from pushing soldiers, I realized I can't treat civilians like soldiers. And that was a huge adjustment. It's just like decompressing. And the military needs to develop some type of a program for people getting ready to retire to like detoxing. And when you get out of the military, there should be a phase where, especially when you're in a hard unit, you need a phase where you need to be decompressed. You really do. Because being a veteran, your mind is not straight. Dude, you're like a light switch. You can't turn off like that. It's hard.
I was in the United States Navy for 4 years, 1968 to 1972. There's only one military branch, and that's the Navy. Sorry, Marines, but that's the truth. I remember getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take a bus to go to the naval station. And on the bus, there was probably 50 of us, and nobody said a word. Nobody talked. It was dark, and we got to the naval training station, and 4 guys walked down and they started screaming at us. Get off the bus, squirrels, get off the bus. And from that point, the entire time we were in boot camp, we were known as squirrels. The nice thing that I found about the Navy is you learn about camaraderie, how to treat other people. One thing I learned, life lesson that I learned in boot camp, is all the different stories everybody had. The ethnic groups that you never knew existed, and how they grew up and what their experiences were. So you learned about what their culture was like. After that, I went to the Republic of Panama back in 1969. At that point, the United States had owned 5 miles on both sides of the canal before we turned it over to the Republic of Panama. And that was just an eye-opening experience. You can have the most gorgeous homes, and then all of a sudden you go around the corner and they live in shanties. The roofs are horrible. The floor is non-existent. You sleep on dirt. You wash your clothes and drink the water, the same water that is used as the sewage. And the kids have nothing. They barely have clothes, and they truly are the have-nots. And that was a real life lesson. Their training regimen was completely different as far as a kid growing up. Chores and what they didn't have running water. They didn't have any of that stuff. So you learn when you saw them work and do their things and how proud they were when we took all this for granted. So that helps you in real life. So listening to people is really important. And then trying to put yourself in their shoes, which is kind of difficult, but you need to do it. And that's how you really learn. I think the other thing that is extremely important, that the life lessons that you have of just dealing with people. I really think that in today's environment, and even when I got out of the service, everybody should go into the military for 2 to 4 years. You learn about people. There's a lot good to be said about it.
I went into the Marine Corps, and my MOS was 5544. And my guide there that was looking at it said, "I don't know what that is, but we'll get the manual to look it out." And it turned out that 5544 was Marine musician and playing French horn. Now, you'd want to know how that all happened. Well, while I was in boot camp, they put out a call for anybody that has a musical talent to go over and audition. So I hadn't played, of course, for a long time, but I got a French horn and played it, and they took notes in that. I didn't hear anything more about it. But I heard about it that as a result of that, instead of going to any other number of places you could go, I was going to be a Marine Corps musician, and they had an opening in a little band in South Korea that they're just waiting for me to get there. And our duty as the band was to provide interest and entertainment to the troops. But it was an all-around military experience, and I really got to do basically what I wanted to do, but never knew that I would ever have that opportunity. I think the most important thing is the people that I came in contact with. So in terms of my before and after, the fact that I met so many people from so many different places, of course that's going to be true probably of all the service people, that experience helped me understand that the world's a big place, and that find friends wherever you make them. And I found some very good friends. I think service in many ways, and whether it's in the military or whether it's in other public service opportunities, is giving back. And I think we've forgotten how to give back in many cases, because it's just so much easier to get along. Can't we all get along?
I was about 20 when I went to Georgia Tech, and they had a very strong NROTC reserve unit there. I guess the seas and the water or whatever sort of appealed to me. And I joined that. I'm very glad I did. I was in the USNR, Naval Reserves, served there for 20 years, from approximately 52 to 72. I spent 2 or 3 years on active duty and the remaining of time as in reserve. I wasn't too good at shooting 40mm guns. That was something new, but I did really, at that point, fall in love with navigation. My favorite part of that was standing watch on the bridge and, observing the maneuvers and all of that. And then finally we said, okay, you're now a watch stander. You'll be the senior officer of the watch. And that was great. That was what I really wanted to do. And it was terrific to be up there at really at midnight sometimes and be responsible for that ship and everybody that was alive in it. Now I was assigned to a type of vessel called an AE, which was an ammunition ship. The function of the ammunition ship was to support aircraft carriers, particularly with aircraft munitions in wartime. The captain was on the bridge and told me, he said, "Oh, you stand by on the outside, on the unengaged side, and keep an eye on what's going on." So, fine. We had not really gotten we were maybe an hour into the process when I noticed a ship on the horizon heading right for us. So I watched it a while, and it was on what they call a constant bearing, which meant you're going to hit it, or it's going to hit you. And the next thing I hear is this emergency signal from the carrier. They're blowing off their stack. There are guys out there with axes cutting the lines apart, and they stopped their engine to drop back. Finally, they realized that they were in the middle of a convoy, and they turned around and got out, and everything was fine. By then we had to just clean everything up. I began to realize from this, the word importance or the significance of being in charge of a ship like that in these kinds of situations. And it was worth your life to know all about this. It was the first step in my realization, which came much later, of the responsibility. I'm a 21-year-old kid. and to think about what could possibly happen. The thing that interests me is, I learned the lessons, but I didn't realize what they meant for a long time. I would have to say when I was out of the Navy or had retired and started looking back on the whole thing, I was blown away by the amount of responsibility service, in this case in the Navy, gave to a young guy coming up. And when you once realize what you've got and what you've done, it changes your life a little bit. Thank goodness I took it seriously. I really grew up, I think, with that.
I'm retired Major Jessica Renee Stearns, 20 years United States Air Force, first 5 as a navigator on C-124 Globemasters flying around the world. I started flying when I was 16, got my private pilot certificate at 17. I've been at it ever since, and that's over 64 years ago. I flew C-141 Starlifters for a while before going to Vietnam as a forward air controller, and O2 Skymasters flying for the Army, and later as O2 Chief Pilot. Rose to the rank of Major on a high school education, believe it or not. I started my college work in 1974, and in 10 years I was able to get my Bachelor of Science and an MBA in management. Well, I've always been pretty good at problem solving and analyzing situations. One of the things I learned early on as a lieutenant when I went to Squadron Officer School, which was emphasized communicative skills. So I sat down and started doing research and cost analysis. I got a new control tower as a result, revised airspace to help out not only the base but New York Air Traffic Control. Then I worked on improved airfield lighting, runway rehabilitation, and making it safer. A lot of major projects like that. So I was busy, and during the same time I had an additional duty as a presidential advance agent on White House staff. And one of the things I learned early on was it was teamwork. You have to work as a team on any large airplane like that. It's critical. And you have to rely on the expertise of everyone involved. I saw a lot. I learned a lot. I saw how the upper levels of government operates to a great extent. And it gave me confidence in my own abilities to quickly solve problems, to come up with solutions, and to make sure things went right.
John Randall Kington was in the Marine Corps from 64 to 66, stationed in most of the large Marine Corps bases, Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, Okinawa. Spent the last 9 months in Vietnam. I was 17 years old, scared to death, never had anyone to talk mean to me, and got to Parris Island and everybody talked mean to me. But the lessons I learned to become a man. I learned that details are important. I learned to depend on other people and hopefully allow them to depend on me. You become less self-centered. You become more group-centered. It's not about you. It's about us. It's not me. It's about the team, the group, the unit. It was a good experience that I've taken with me for 57 years almost. I was hurt March 21, 1966. A North Vietnamese bullet tore into the front part of my neck, and the bullet lifted me up off of the ground, up in the air. And once up in the air, I began to roll and float in slow motion. My first thought was, I'm going to die. This is it. I landed on my back so hard, some way my legs flew up over my face. I'm laying there exposed. They're shooting at me. I mean, can you believe I'm injured? I carried the radio that day, and they had to destroy my radio to have any chance at all. They're still shooting at me. 16 men died within a few yards of me that morning. I'm thinking, if I die this moment, I'm going to go to heaven. And that was really peaceful. But you know what? I didn't want to die. I wanted to stay alive. I wanted to come home and see my mom and dad and let them know what God had just done in my life. And I'm laying there, I'm paralyzed from my neck down. I can't move anything. The only thing I can move is my eyes. My eyes, my face. Even worse, I'd stopped breathing. I'm awake. I'm wide awake, and I've stopped breathing. I couldn't get any air into my lungs at all. And I asked God, I need my hands, please. Before I got the word please out, feeling rushed into my shoulders, down to my fingertips. I quickly reached up and shoved my knees off of my face, and my diaphragm swelled out. I took in one of the sweetest breaths of air. I left Morristown, Tennessee, 6'1", 191 pounds, small waist. When I looked in the mirror, I liked what I saw. And I came home confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life, emaciated. I know they told my parents I'd live about 10 years. Here I'm into going close to 55 years. For me, being wounded in service, I learned to let somebody else help me for a change. I learned to be more humble. The biggest thing I learned in the Marine Corps is I learned to love my brothers, and I learned that they love me too. If I respected them, they would respect me. For 36 years, my emotions were locked up. For 36 years, I couldn't cry. I didn't know what was wrong. April 2002, I met the man who saved my life. Saved my life 36 years before. He was a lieutenant then. He's a Marine general today. And we had the best 2.5 hours. It was back and forth, remember this, remember that. It's the first time either one of us wanted to talk about the worst day. Remember, 16 men died within a few yards of the two of us. It was just one of those defining days. As we got ready to part, General Brown walked around behind my wheelchair, leaned over and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. And he stayed there for the longest time. He then squeezed me tighter, moved closer, and whispered 4 words that literally changed my life. He said, "Randy, I love you." Those words sounded like, "You're now forgiven." What had I done that I felt guilty about? I didn't, but for some reason, I was carrying that guilt of losing so many friends, of not being there for them, the truth is I'd built a room in the back of my life and locked away 64, 65, 66. Locked away the memories of the horrors of war, the death, the destruction, what a 18, 19-year-old should never have seen. I dealt with all that by not dealing with it. And being with General Brown and being able to talk about it, being able to talk about what had happened. I can't tell you how good it felt to finally be able to release. And after, 18 years now? After over 18 years, I'm still free. I don't have that guilt anymore. I can cry. I'm emotional. I'm not only happy, but I've got joy. And it all came from the military.
My military service was in the United States Air Force. I was a senior airman, which was an E4 in the Air Force. It was the highest rank I attained. But my job while I was in was on the MH-53 Pavlo helicopter, which was the Air Force version of Special Operations. So the most important thing that you learn very quickly, especially in the Air Force, is attention to detail. It's always important that your landings equal the number of takeoffs, correct? So they were very focused on attention to detail, down to the point where in basic training we would literally use an iron and tweezers to fold our laundry to get those perfect squares on our t-shirts, our underwear, our socks. There were very strict requirements on the spacing in your locker of the items that were hanging up, your dress shirts. And that was a very important thing because it taught you to pay attention to those little details, because they add up very quickly to become a big detail if you get a few of them wrong. So today, in my job, there's a lot of detail that goes into that, and you have to be very quick in how you solve a problem. You do learn very quickly how to prioritize and carry on with what you're doing, even under very stressful sometimes moments. Because the whole system is what's important, and that's the thing about the military. It doesn't matter what job you have in the military, you are part of a whole system that when one piece breaks down, the rest of it can very easily fail. And so there are absolutely no unimportant jobs in the military, whether you were the chow hall cook, the yeoman on a naval ship handling paperwork, or the special operator entering foreign airspace to rescue someone. Your job was just as important as the next, and without every one of them in the whole system, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Marines, none of us could have been as successful without our brothers and sisters.
My name is Jerry Sanford. New York City kid. I joined the Navy. I actually joined the Navy Reserves when I was in my senior in high school. So here I am, a bunch of us get on a bus, and we are driven down to Bainbridge, Maryland, and out in these barracks in the middle of nowhere. And here I am, I can't even understand these guys talking. I mean, listen to me. You got thrown together with a bunch of people, and you all had the one thing to do is to serve. And you got to meet some different people and their food. You know, a lot, I had no, and the language was very hard for me to understand. And of course, to hardly understand a New Yorker. And here I am talking to these kids from the mountains in Alabama and Tennessee and all. You got to put two socks together. You know, your mother's not there. You know, you better clean up or else there's nobody there to pick up after you. You know, it teaches you responsibility and to lean on the guy next to you. You might not like him or love him, but you have to work because you're both there for the same thing. You can extend that through my whole time in the Navy when you're on a ship and you're floating out there. Boy, I tell you what, there's just you and the ship and your shipmates, and you got to take care of each other. So yeah, it's important. You know, we had a good ship's crew for those couple of years, and then I got out. I finished my service in 1962, and then. I joined the fire department and then switched over in 1965 and spent 3 years as a cop. You got to know the guys and they had your back and you had their back. And I kind of passed that along to being a cop. I mean, you know, you're just you and your partner, and that's the kind of the same thing. And when you get to the fire department, it's you and 5 other guys on the truck. And, you know, the cavalry ain't coming, it's you. You know, and so those are really strong beliefs of the brotherhood and the camaraderie that you have amongst people. The service taught me to help other people. The first attack on New York City in '93, the World Trade Center, and then of course 9/11. Sometimes I have a hard time talking about it. I was involved in that and got sick from that, and. But you know what? That's the hand that's dealt to you. You have to deal. You have to play it out. You can't go. You know, everybody. You don't want to pity any yourself or anything. You just pick up your drawers and get out there and do the job. Those things I learned in the service, and you know, kind of use them to this moment.
Well, you know, I learned a lot about teamwork in high school, playing ball, basketball, and football, and that. But I found out what more likely teamwork meant being in the military. I graduated from high school in '61, and that's when I went into the Air Force Academy right after graduating from high school, and after Colorado Springs. I was in the Air Force, a pilot, and I ended up resigning from the Air Force when I was a captain. I was a prisoner of war for 5 years and 2 months. That's 1,882 days, most of it in solitary confinement. But we had ways to communicate with other prisoners of war in the camp, so we did that and kept each other alive, to be honest with you. Kept our spirits up in Vietnam. I almost made it from Hanoi to the Gulf of Tonkin. An F-4 has 2 engines on it. One of my engines had flames coming out 2.5 aircraft lengths long. A chase plane was following me out. Said, "Wayne, you're going to make it. You're going to make it." They had the boats all lined up on the beach, ready to pick me up if I could punch out, eject out of the airplane. And doggone it, I could see the boats. They were waiting for me, and I had the guys telling me, "Watch out, Wayne, get ready to punch out because your plane's got air. It's coming out of 2.5 aircraft lengths long out of one engine, flames." And unfortunately, plane flipped over, I lost control, and I had to punch out. It was pretty low level. And a few seconds later, I found myself hanging in a tree. My chute opened, and there I am, 10 or 12 feet above the ground, and I let go of the release harnesses and fell to the ground, and it wasn't minutes, and they were swarming on me like bees, captured me. And then I had about a 3-day trek to get to Hanoi. Talk about teamwork. I didn't go to what they call the bathhouse for days and days. And I was beaten pretty severely going through that phase. And then they threw me into a cell in what we call the warehouse, solitary confinement. Being 24 years old when I was shot down. I was one of the youngest people in the camp. There were colonels there and older fellows, and they were in isolation, not just solitary confinement. You know, we learned from each other. Through the walls, another POW at the other end of that drain, and he got on his knees and yelled through the drain hole. And he says, "Hey, new guy, cap code. 5 rows, 5 columns. The C and the K are the same." What? It took me a while to figure it. And then I hear the tap, and I said, "Oh, I know what they're doing now. They're trying to communicate with me." We'd spend all of our time teaching each other. Languages, for instance. I learned 3 different languages. Most of them came out in pretty good shape. I mean, mentally, as a result of working together. So I think that experience really did rub off and help me. That's what we learned as a prisoner of war, and I think that was a military lesson that I came out of with. The teamwork was so important to all of us that we wouldn't have made it without each other. And I felt that way running businesses that I didn't really know much about. Started engineering for a company called Air Products, and then went to Airco and the companies. And so the people, I think, really respected that. And they worked harder at their jobs as a result. And the companies did extremely well as a result. So what these guys did, and the fellow was so unbelievable, it took him years to collect these poems. But in solitary confinement, they wrote these poems. And I published it. And just to think of what you can do, like solo, when you're in solitary. The guy writes this poem. "Time is an ocean, the scene for my trip. 4 walls and shadows consist of my ship. Out on this ocean there's nothing to see, for no one is there except time and me. And time has no substance, so I guess you could say I'm alone, alone in a terrible way. And yet at the bottom of this murky brine," I haven't read this long, "there's a light that forever shines. That life is God, and life evermore. And with His help, I will find the far shore." I haven't read that in a long time, but it's hard to read. Pretty amazing.
My name is David Longfield Smith. I served in the United States Air Force for 8 years and 4 months. I worked as a military working dog handler, a security policeman, working with bomb dogs and drug dogs. I became a staff sergeant before I left, and I was stationed mainly at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. I was raised in a fairly dysfunctional family. We had a lot of challenges. I never actually attended high school. At 16, I did the GED. I'd started working at age 13. My education was pretty much what I learned by myself. So I saw the military as a great opportunity to learn more, not just about life, but about the skills that I needed to be successful in life. I think as my time in the military progressed, I learned the importance of we not me. And I think for myself, that was probably one of the greatest lessons I had as a member of the military. The bottom line is your role, your function, your existence depends on the effectiveness of the team. And if you don't know what your responsibilities are, and if you're not able to help those around you towards achieving that goal, you as a unit fail. So the we is more important than the me. I think it gave me a sense for this passion back to the desire of helping others, educating others, sharing with others. The importance of coming together, assessing needs, looking for weaknesses and opportunities, and working together as a team. But genuinely training the younger folks and giving them encouragement, because a lot of the younger folks were pretty scared. But I think that sharing that knowledge and encouraging folks even in the worst of times, that was important. You know, they say astronauts are never the same since they've been out in space and looked back on Earth. Things on Earth seem to be kind of insignificant. And it's not quite that bold for me, but having that military experience, then becoming a civilian, it's kind of disappointing because there's not the focus, there's not the responsibility, there's not the planning and organization. The military has its faults, don't get me wrong, but sometimes that structure, I think, would help people and would help society in some ways, just kind of coming together, working towards that shared goal. Looking back at my time in the military, it really struck me that I thought that honestly everybody should do military service. And not because everybody should go to war. I actually have the opinion, as many others do, that if everybody served in the military, there'd probably be fewer wars. There's a sense of responsibility and I think shared effort. If everyone's got skin in the game, and I don't mean that to sound heavy or patriotic, but I think it's sharing and helping others, it really is. I felt that military service shouldn't be something that those people do. It should be something that everyone does in whatever capacity they can. If not military service, community service, I think being involved in your community, your city, your county, your state, helping your country, it's so important to have an understanding of your role, your responsibility, and how you can contribute to a greater good.
I was going to an all-female Catholic college in Erie, Pennsylvania. School was a little bit expensive, and I come from a small little farming community. We only have about 300 people as our population. And so part of me joining the military was they were going to pay for my school. And I said, okay, I will do 4 years. Decided after 4, let me do another 4, and then I'm just going to stay in. I served in our fine United States of America Army as an Army Nurse Corps officer for 24 years. I retired as a lieutenant colonel in 2015. When I first came in, there's a couple things that really stood out to me. One, yes, the discipline. Doing the right things the right way all the time without having been told how to do it or what to do. As you go through your career and you go up in rank, sometimes you develop skills of different people's leadership styles. But you really want to see what's worked best for you in your own toolbox. So as I went through my career and learned the different tools, creating that leadership philosophy of what people really need. And so when I was thinking, what do people really need? Well, that's the perfect leadership philosophy. What do people need? People. Okay, people need to be proficient in their jobs. They don't know how to do the job. They need to know what to do. They need to be given the tools to be able to do their job. Then I'm like, oh, E, let's be enthusiastic about our job. Have fun with our job, know our job, go out there and really want to come to work every day. Oh, organize, be organized, dress right dress, everything in a battle book, know what to do, how to do it. Then you have your other P, and that would be more professionalism, how you act, how you carry yourself, how you work with each other. Then the next one is going to be your L. L, be loyal. Be loyal to who you work for, be loyal to the agency or the company or to United States Army, whatever you're a part of, be loyal to that. And then your other E is empower. Empower your staff, empower the people. They have so much knowledge and so many ideas and initiatives. Give them that. Let them be part of that team. The other thing that for me that was a kind of a culture shock was the culture of diversity. In that small little farming community that I grew up in, we didn't have the opportunity to see all these different people from different races, different creeds, different nationalities. We didn't see any of that. And so coming into the military and standing side by side with every different type of person and race and creed, to me that was one of the most fascinating things about joining the military and seeing how we all work side by side. We all have the same color blood.
US 55279-123, and that was my service number. And I started in 1952 and got out in 54. 22 months, and most of it in Korea, in combat. Started out as a buck private. You can't get any lower in my Army. And ended up as a sergeant first class. That's going from no stripes to 5 stripes. And the 5th stripe, or the elevation from corporal to sergeant first class, took place in 60 days. And it happened after the firing stopped. We were in training mode, and we had a specific area we could fire into. We're in the Fire Direction Center, which I was, Headquarters Battery, I Corps Artillery, 999 AFA, Armored Field Artillery. We were going to do some firing that day, training exercises. No officer present. I was running the show, operations sergeant. I was a corporal at that point. Knock on the door. New commanding officer, battalion commander, opens the door and says, "Fire mission." Okay, come on in, sir. So he gives us the coordinates. So I give them to Abel, guy up here. I give them to the plotter here, then I have my own plot. We all plot them to make sure we're okay. And the Abel guy looks at it, he says, the plotter looks at it. I looked at it, and his eyes said, double check. So we double checked it, and it was all negative. He had coordinates firing on the 1st ROK Marine Division. Our ROK is Royal Army of Korea. And as such, and I said, "Sir, would you mind stepping outside for a minute?" So he walked out the door, I shut the door, and he said, "What's up?" And I said, "Those coordinates are bad." Looked at him, "Bad?" I said, "Yeah, firing onto a Korean Army location." He said, "You gotta be kidding." I said, "I don't kid like this stuff, sir." Anyways, he said, "Thank you," and left. I walked in and I said, "Stand down," because we'd gone to, when you say a fire mission, everybody get up. Anyways, stand down, just testing us, readiness situation. And never said a word to anybody, ever, within the organization. 60 days, I went from corporal, that's an E2, to a sergeant first class. That's 3 jumps, E5, in 60 days. It happened. And, it is so fluky and unreal. I can remember so many things about the squad team. I can remember the below 0 weather. It does get cold over there. I can remember getting up at 3 o'clock at night because the stove had gone out. Fuel oil had congealed in the line coming in. I can remember lighting papers on fire and going out and holding it underneath to get the stuff flowing, and those things you don't forget. I wrote my mother a lot. We were pretty close. I was the youngest of 7, near death, and that as a 3-year-old. So we were close. And I wrote her a lot. She kept every single letter and had them bundled up. So I don't know how many are in there. And I think all the family has read them. I cannot read those letters. I can't. That's a different Bruce than now. For the last, since I got out, I have not been able to do that. There's something up here, I'm sure. It doesn't bother me, but there's just something there, that's all. My biggest goal is to get face-to-face with veterans again. When you are sitting with a guy who's terminal, and you walk in, you say, anything you say will never leave this room today. Any question you have, any comment, and then hear them open up. Maybe not the first time, but the second time they'll open up. And they'll talk about service, they'll talk about family, they'll talk about their careers and stuff. And that to me is big time. It's big time. People need help. I'm a volunteer at heart, always have been. There's just so many things happen out there. So many veterans are different things. Look at the homeless veterans right now. The sacrifices that a veteran makes goes far beyond the individual.
My name is Jack Fulmer. I was in the United States Marine Corps as a captain from 1966 through 1970. I was graduating from Penn State University, and I had a degree, bachelor's degree, but I was leaving the sanctuary, the safeness of a college environment where you're pretty much shielded from anything in the outside world. And now I had to go get a job. So how was I going to do that? Clueless. So I got home. I was home about 2 weeks, and I got a letter in the mail from my Selective Service Board saying you've been reclassified from a student deferment to a 1A. What that means is you've just been drafted. So now I had a job. My mother went as white as a sheet because she knew what that meant. And my dad told me, he said, well, you know, you're slated for Vietnam because the Marines are the primary role there. So I went to Quantico when I arrived. I brought with me the same fervor that I found out my fellow soldiers had. Everybody loved God, their country, and the flag. The first thing that happens in boot camp is you find out you're not the center of the universe anymore. And the world does not evolve around you. Because I had a computer course, one computer course in Penn State before I graduated, I qualified for the logistics and for the data processing training. So my job at that point was to receive the damaged gear and to send down a replacement. Because if you remember back in the early days of the 60s, they don't have computers. You had a computer right now on your phone. Well, back then we had these trays and trays and trays of card decks. And heaven help you if you dropped those card decks on the floor because everyone had to be in sequence. So I wasn't as glamorous as it sounded initially, but it was a great field for me to get started. It actually got me launched into the IT field, and I used that when I left the Marine Corps. So I got a touch of the war, but not like the grunts. They were up around the DMZ, Khe Sanh, Chu Lai, but it was close enough. At the end of my 13-month tour there, I received my discharge orders to come back to the States and process out. And I always remember when I was departing the campus for San Diego Airport, they told me to make sure you don't wear your uniform. And I didn't realize at the time the degree of the Vietnam conflict, and you were sort of a marked man. So I carried it in my duffel bag and I put on civvies. I went to San Diego Airport, flew back to Washington, D.C. and joined my wife in Alexandria, Virginia. When I returned to the States and eventually got back to Virginia, I took on a new status. And it was a proud status. You were called a veteran. And that, to me, really meant something. I tend to hover around other veterans because there's a cohesiveness that exists in that community. And it's a support system in a way, but there are people you feel comfortable around because you've done what they've done. every veteran coming back has some degree of scars. Some are physical, some are mental. But I would venture to say that everybody has something. And most of it is internal. You don't externalize it. You can around your veteran friends, but you just don't talk about it. It's kind of a hidden area of your life. I'd say it's very important for veterans to take care of themselves. I honestly don't know a veteran that hasn't had some kind of emotional scar, and they keep it well hidden. But it festers, and you sort of carry it with you your whole life. Some people actually go for help with it. A lot don't, because they feel they're stronger than that and they can overcome it. But it's there, and you don't notice it as badly when you're around other veterans, because you know you have a common thread between you. They all have it and you have it, and it makes it bearable. One of the things that gives me the most satisfaction is we have a ritual team at the VFW. And we go out and when a family contacts the VFW to say they have a deceased family member, they ask us to do the ceremony at the gravesite or in the, like at Hodges indoor if there's a cremation. So we have a ritual team. We do a flag folding, and we have a 21-gun salute and the playing of taps. Normally my job, if I'm a senior officer on deck, I help fold the flag, but I have to give it to the next of kin. I have to stop a second. That's a very rewarding piece of the ceremony, but it's hard because you have to look in the eyes of the next of kin when you give them that flag. And that's a look you can't replace. I'd like to share with you the definition of a veteran that I heard and I retain to this day. A veteran is someone who wrote a blank check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their life.